Hey guys and gals, Nary here from Drakewing Gaming. Send me on Twitter, the Gaming Drag. Today I'm coming back at you to the Let's Play episode of Lyre. That's right. The next part of Chapter 10 has already released, and there's a Part 3 coming up soon, so this will probably be pretty quick to get through. But yeah, just consider some more content for Lyre. Always welcome. But anyway, y'all, let's go ahead and jump right back in. Alarm chain, you're up, and let's go. Okay. The last thing he thinks is whether Leuven's going to be safe. Yeah, I'm very curious to see what has happened. They got into a pretty nasty fight. Part 2. Adrius. A chilly draft settles on the ground beneath Adrius's hooves. The entire throne room is thick with silence. A silence is so strong that one could possibly hear their own thoughts echoing off the walls. Adrius leans into the throne, the great hunk of wood standing tall on the mass of ground beneath it. Rail guards clad in snowy white cloaks line the steps up to the tree-like chair, each facing forward, the sunlight bouncing off their armor. Elizabeth and Leif are positioned on either side of the throne. Liz is on his right, sitting in a small chair placed on the step. She's looking at the ground, deeply lost in thought. Leif stands off to his left, his arms behind his back, rocking back and forth on his taloned feet nervously. The bird was always skittish, but what happened this morning has left him more on edge than usual. Adrius drums his hard fingertips on the arm of the throne, his patience draining by the minute. I thought he was already in our custody. Liz looks up from the ground and straightens her posture, glancing in Adrius's direction before responding. I'm sure they will return. I'm sure they will be here any moment now. You have to remember, they're not here to be put on trial. The position they've been put in because of this situation. They've been put between the hammer and the anvil, so to speak. Respectfully, Elizabeth, I don't see it that way. They may not have been caught at the scene of my father's murder, but I feel they're trying just as hard to drag his kingdom into the ground. Your Majesty, I'm afraid I must agree with Minister Reen. Leif tiptoes forward a bit, trying his best to keep eye contact, but constantly glancing around the room. In my experience with him, he only seems to be a bit eccentric. Then explain to me why he would try something so rash. I can't explain that. That is something I am unable to gauge. But don't worry, we're going to find out. Adrius takes a deep breath and slumps into the large chair. The fact that he would attempt something like this. Everything adds up, but it's still so unpredictable. Not only that, but it could ruin everything. My only concern is that finding out might open up more problems. Even if it doesn't, more problems are sure to come our way regardless. I hope... Liz starts to respond, but she looks in the direction of the large doorway as faint footsteps can be heard approaching. Good. Adrius stands from the throne and watches as two castle guards walk in, their faces stoic. The cat they're escorting, however, looks less than pleased. Even with a slightly annoyed face, Lord Kadaj walks confidently down the hall, following behind the two guards as a few of Kadaj's own Drizzian guards follow behind him. The castle guards stop the Drizzian guards from approaching any further as the cat makes his way up the hall. Kadaj stops a short distance from the steps up to the throne and throws himself into a bow, looking up at Adrius and rising from his lowered position. I had not thought to be summoned so abruptly. But when the guards insisted, well, I guess I had no choice. Your Majesty, was there something else that you needed from me? Adrius toys with his gloves and looks down at Kadaj with a cocked eyebrow. Was there something I had already requested of you, my lord? Well, I've scarcely had the luxury of freedom. Being able to go where I please and do as I like. I only assume that there's more restrictions you would like to put in place. So terribly sorry for the inconvenience, but as you know, we'll be needing you in the next couple of days, especially considering your role in all this. That's the least of our... By the way, I'm so glad you decided to bring up the topic. It really does beg the question. Adrius gestures to the southern window. Why are you trying to leave? The words echo throughout the hall, rising up to the ceiling like heat in a cold room. It begs the question of how many flies you have listening in on my private conversations. Kadaj says this with a bit of levity, but nobody else is humored. He coughs and waves his paw in the air. I wasn't trying to leave before the trial, if that's what you were thinking. No? What gave you the assumption you could leave at all? Kadaj's shoulders rise a bit, hearing this. It just seems that someone decided to slack your leash a bit too much. It will become very tiring, having to reel in my close advisors at times as troubling as these. A close advisor who is also a suspect, as you know. According to your dogs, at least. Adrius clenches his fist, but his face stays calm. You don't need to remind me, Cat. Kadaj continues. Being a suspect, I'm not much help in an investigation, aside from answering the questions thrown my way. Meg's contribution will of course take place 4 days from now. Liz leans forward in her seat, her chin resting on a balled-up fist. What is the point you're trying to make? 1 second, y'all. Let me get all comfy here. There we go. Alright. Kadaj shifts his weight to the other leg, looking up at Adrius, his large green eyes piercing his own with a feeling Adrius can't quite describe. I would think that reeling me in wouldn't be on your list of priorities. If you wish to take me on as a witness, I will be here, but right now my usefulness seems to have run its course. At least not until the trial. Adrius sits back down, running his hands along the arms of the chair impatiently. So you claim you were only making plans to leave after the trial? In a way, yes. Whether you departed now or later doesn't matter. Even leaving after the trial still goes against our agreement with Driss. You understand this, do you not? Of course I do. Kadaj leans his head to the side, looking down at the ground with theatrical guilt plastered on his face. If it helps clear things up, I only wanted to be sure such options would be open to me when the time came. Then I was going to bring the proposition to you, Your Highness. Kadaj gestures to Adrius, who rises in his seat. That is a very peculiar story. Peculiar, yet true. That is one thing people never expect from me, but I tell the truth quite a lot. To me, it doesn't make much sense to make such a proposal, without first knowing whether my retainers would be able to make the journey so soon. I'm sure all of us had figured it out, but just to be clear, what is this proposal? Liz smooths out her robes and straightens her posture, as if to let Kadaj know that he has her full, undivided attention. I know that contact with Aaron in my own kingdom has already been made, but I feel that it won't be enough to cool the flames, even after this business is settled with our unfortunate Iranian lord. He steps forward a bit. Adrius can't help but be intrigued by what he had planned. He knows that he can't be trusted entirely, but something about this cat strikes his curiosity. As Kadaj tries to continue with his plea, a commotion can be heard coming up from the hallway. The racket gets louder, and everyone stands and turns toward the entrance. The guards at the door stand at the ready while the two of them go out into the hall. When they return, a few more guards and 2 members of the Royal Guard enter. One of them is Finn, the eagle who usually gets assigned with the Bjorn. The other one looks to be worse for wear, his arms slung around Finn's shoulder for support. His cape is ripped and armor scuffed and scratched. Adrius quickly realizes that it's Lyall. His face is wrapped in bandages, with one of his eyes covered up. Wouldn't be surprised if he could even speak with the amount of bandages wrapped around his snout. He seems to be able to walk easily, but his head slumping down into the fur around his neck shows that he's not entirely with it. Lyall! Leaf scuttles down the steps of the throne, making his way over to Lyall. Lyall pats Finn on the chest, and Finn lifts Lyall's arm off of his shoulder, backing away cautiously and allowing Lyall to steady himself. Damn. What happened? Good lord. Leaf is practically running circles around Lyall, checking him, then making him bend down so he can get a good look at his face. Oh my, your wounds look terrible! These bandages look awful too! I'm fine. Leaf looks up at Finn. How did this happen to him? Lyall blushes and looks at the ground, and Adrius can't tell if it's from embarrassment or all the commotion Leif is causing. The wolf looks exhausted, enough to make Adrius' concern almost match his curiosity. A villager found me at the gates of the castle and told me that Bjorn was attacking the captain in the markets. I quickly grabbed as many castle guards nearby as I could and we made our way into the village. When we got there, Reed had him beaten to a bloody mess and Bjorn was laying on top of him, unconscious. Reed was barely conscious, holding him together the best he could. A few guards asked around, the townsfolk said Reed was attacking and acting in self-defense. The villager said he went for a less violent approach, and once he did, it was over before they knew it. Bjorn's fists were covered in blood, and there wasn't a scratch on him. Why had he passed out then? We don't really know for sure. He's currently being taken to the infirmary. It could be his chest pains again. If they got worse, it could have been what caused him to pass out. Leaf turns to Adrius. You see, he's been a bit ill lately. Adrius points to one of the castle guards. You there. I need you to go with Leaf to the infirmary so you can check on Sir Bjorn. Come back once he no longer needs your services. Leif walks up to Finn, the eagle towering over him. Are Lyall's injuries truly as grave as they look? Or was this just a bit too much bandages from someone hoping to be a field doctor one day? Still, he pans his head in the direction of the other guards, and a few of them try to avoid eye contact. He was all bruised up and bleeding. He looked like he got punched quite a few times in the sniffer. One of his eyes was a bit swollen, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't horribly damaged. Lyall tries to speak up, each word coming out slowly and a bit slurred. The bandages around his snout didn't help either, acting almost as a muzzle. I can still see. Leaf beckons Lyall to bend down so he can inspect him. The bird lightly clasps his face between his gloved wings and slightly lifts the patch on top of Lyall's eye. Your eye looks like it'll be fine with proper treatment. It just got all swollen from being punched so many times. Leaf throws his wings into the air in exasperation. Was the blood even properly cleaned? Heavens! Adrius sinks into his seat, letting out an annoyed sigh. No, I shouldn't judge. It's a good temporary treatment. Nevertheless... Leaf breaks into a small run towards the door, sprinting backwards and calling out to Finn. Make sure to have Lyall brought to me as soon as possible. Of course! The guard that Adrius addresses runs after Leif, following the small bird out into the hall. Lyall clasps his paw to his face, rubbing the side of his head. Lyall, how are you feeling? Do you remember what happened? Kadaj is now sitting on the steps leaning up to the throne, holding his tail between his paws. Lyall attempts to respond, but the bandages around his face make it difficult to get even a single word out. He grabs the bandages around his muzzle and stretches them out, allowing him to move his jaw easier. Finn makes a hasty motion to stop him from hurting himself, but he finishes messing with the wraps and continues speaking. I'll be getting new ones in a bit anyway. To answer your question, I feel fine. I've been through worse. He moves his jaw around uncomfortably while speaking, as if setting it back into place. Adrius looks at him, eyebrow raised. He knows that Lyall's had worse happen to him. Still, his pain tolerance must be pretty high. He can't help but remember when he was a young prince and Lyall was just a squire. He had to wear that eye patch for a whole week after getting back from... I don't care about any of that. What truly happened in the market? Lyall recoils slightly, yet still tries to answer the question. Well, Bjorn attacked me because, hold on, everything is a bit fuzzy. Just try to start over from the beginning. Lyall looks around the room, thinking to himself. For a few moments he shakes his head in disappointment. I'm sorry, but I can't really remember much of what happened. I just... feelings and emotions. Everything's a blur. Do you remember when we talked earlier? A little bit, yeah. I remember most of that, actually. Adrius looks in Liz's direction. When did you two talk? When I went outside earlier. Adrius looks back over to Lyall, gesturing with his hand. What feelings do you remember? Lyall contemplates this for a moment, then answers. Anger. I'd be angry too if someone did that to me. Lyall looks down at the ground in shame. I remember I was winning, but I didn't want to hurt him. Is that why you lost? Possibly. Adrius leans forward in his seat, placing his elbows on his thighs and looking down at Lyall. Yes, well, I thank you for not butchering one of your guards. Adrius knows Lyall would have easily won a duel with Bjorn if he truly was out for blood. Bjorn is most definitely to blame for this fight, but why would he do it? I'm sure your recollection of the events will come back in due time, most likely at your own convenience. Not knowing why this happened is truly what bothers Adrius. Bjorn's prone to violence, but not without his own twisted reason. The idea that he would lash out. Maybe he knows something Adrius doesn't. He thinks to himself for a few seconds before Liz speaks up. Yes, let's hope for a full recovery on both ends. Bjorn will be punished accordingly once he wakes from his hibernation if all holds true. Adrius nods his head. Remember, the royal guard causing such chaos needs to be handled with care. No punishment at all is out of the question. You're free to go, dog. Go, have Lee fix you up. We can't have you looking like that on the day of the trial. Adrius. Adrius holds up a hand, silencing her. Next time, don't lose the fight so easily. A dog who can't keep his subordinates in check doesn't really inspire. Lyall motions to leave in a huff, and as he's walking out, Adrius rises from the throne. Better yet, I want you wearing that helmet of yours on the day of the trial. Cover up the bruises and whatnot. Can't have your lovers seeing you like that. Adrius! Set a good example for the royal guard for once. I was already leaving the hall, followed by Finn and the few castle guards still remaining. Kadage's guards also follow behind and stay by the door. What a show! Liz turns around in her chair, looking at Adrius with disgust in her eyes. It makes his stomach lurch, but he resolves to show no emotion. Must you be so harsh to him? Adrius points at the doorway and gestures to the remaining royal guards in the hall. Don't question me in front of them again. Do you understand? Liz has a look of shock on her face for only a moment before she quickly backs down. Her fist is slightly clenched, but Adrius doesn't notice. Yes. He almost hated saying that, but he can't let her assume that he can be scolded like a child. The more problems Lyall and the rest of them cause, the more his disdain for them grows. Adrius leans back in his chair, his gaze falling upon Kadaj. You'll have to forgive them for the slight interruption. Nothing like that has happened in a long time. It's all right. I was using a different voice for Kadaj. Okay. When I saw what happened to the captain, I had feared the worst. Why don't we continue from where we left off? What was the proposal you were planning on making? Ah, yes. I understand you've already tried to make contact with Driss. I'm afraid that it won't be enough, however. So what is it that you want? Send me instead. At the end of the trial, I'll leave the city and make for Driss. I can then speak with King Aaron personally, clear all this mess up, and then return once the flames have settled. Adrius lets out a quick laugh. How could we possibly be sure that you would return? There's two very simple reasons. Having spent quite a while there recently, I'm sure Mr. Rene can personally confirm that us Drizians are very true to our word. A promise means a lot to us. Adrius looks to Liz, who begrudgingly nods her head. I'm sure you're also aware of the other reason. That being... I'm not just faithful to one kingdom. Adrius rolls his eyes. Your faith in both Lyre and Driss is expected. Close, but that's not what I meant. I put my faith in all of the kingdoms. I serve Tigran, not just the kingdom I'm currently helping. Kadaj takes a step up the stairs. Now do you understand? I wasn't chosen to come here by some king. I volunteered. Lyre's connection with Driss and Aaron is paramount if this kingdom wishes to heal the wounds that have been placed upon it. Those last words cause something inside of Adrius to break. He looks the cat in the eyes as if his gaze could pierce the back of the feline's head. Reconnection? Cooperation? Kadaj nods his head. Yes, I'm sure that there are plenty of reasons why that could be beneficial. The powerful and advanced kingdom of Driss exports many valuables. Gold so plentiful that it covers the desert's shimmering sands. Salt, that precious mineral that preserves our meats. Not only that, but it helps with the flavor too. Wouldn't you agree? Kadaj furrows his brow. I suppose. Stone, granite, materials as sturdy as their people. Adrius rubs his hand along the arm of the throne. I would like to add another pair of exports more common than those prior. His voice shakes a bit as he raises his tone. Weak-willed rulers incapable or unwilling to solve the problems they create, and bandits who travel this world stripping everything good from it. Excuse me? That is not the case. Wars have been started over words less blunt than yours. If your father heard you say such things... He can't, and I'm afraid he never will. Neither will my mother. Oh. I find myself sitting alone in a court meant for many. My meals are quiet and cold, devoid of motherly concern or fatherly pride. My castle and kingdom goes unchanged without my direct influence. Between your absolute inability to solve even the most basic issues, and allowing your bandits and brigands to take my mother, as well as the exceptionally unexceptionable diplomat from Aaron conniving and conspiring to steal my father. I'll go ahead and pause it right there. Oh man, this is getting intense. Alright, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, leave a super thanks for a tip if you can, it always helps. Until the next video, I love you all. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!